almost every like major executive at a game developer or game developer studio, every AAA company is run by business folks, many of whom don't play games, have never played games, likely would never play games on their own, even though they run these big studios. They might do a little bit, and it kind of varies on a studio-to-studio basis. I think like Phil Spencer's a good example where he like was a little bit more involved, but even then, he answered to Microsoft, who, you know, do you think? Who's the current head of Microsoft? Do you think he plays video games? Do you think he even cares about any of the things that Blizzard has ever made? Or is it just kind of another thing on a ledger that makes Microsoft look better? Almost always is that case, rather than these people being someone that actually like deeply cares about it. I'm thinking specifically about, well, I mean, an easy one would be the I'm not going to say hostile takeover, but the buyout of Electronic Arts that's going on right now. Effectively like a Saudi investment group in conjunction with Jared Kushner, I believe, are working to buy Electronic Arts completely. And feels gross, to be honest. Really wish I could like just jettison things down here. Because I've got like 2 more of these and I'm sure they have stuff in them. Well, yeah, it does. I should have made like a little locker base. Wait, question. Somebody said I could do this. Can I? Oh. Okay, some of these things are not going to be storable, but a lot of them are. Okay, let's take these back. This is awesome. The only problem is I actually don't have enough oxygen here, which is a slight frustration. And of course, these don't have enough oxygen either. But I think some of the people involved in this deal are ones that do play video games here and there. But it is one of those where it is still like a series of really beloved game studios that have been hostile takeovered so many times that there's like nothing left from what they used to be. And so like the EA that gave us Mirror's Edge or well, I'd say Red Alert, but no, that was something that they bought. You know, Westwood kind of screwed up their finances and needed somebody to be a parent corporation. And so they got tossed around until EA picked them up and then destroyed them. Like, there's a lot of reasons why I'm super hostile to big businesses in gaming. And I would say Westwood was like the one that originally made me super pissed about all of this stuff because I loved Westwood. I thought Red Alert was amazing. And more or less EA was like, yeah, but you're not making enough money. Yeah, ship with Theseus, but instead of replacing the broken parts, they're replacing parts with more rotten pieces. Yeah, more or less. Or even just like taking the parts away. Oh, we don't need that mast. Oh, we don't need those sails. What? It's, I don't know. It feels like I'm always kind of talking conspiracy man crazy town with these things, but very much it's just the ultra wealthy are trying to buy out as much of human culture and creativity and everything that they possibly can, because that's the only way that they are going to feasibly control the world. You know, you can't exactly just go for like a full militaristic hostile takeover yet. We just don't have the tech for that. But they're working on it. You know, robot dogs with guns on their backs. Who knows? Let's see, I do my best not to be a Valve fanboy, but it being privately owned has been a boon for gamers. Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, half the reason why we're seeing this, you know, major boom in handhelds, but then also Linux and gaming, but then also indie games in general, you really can, you know, lay at Valve's feet. And I think they deserve it. However, there's 2 problems with Valve. One, they take a 30% cut from anybody that releases on them, which is normal, but is a little rough, because they actually reduce that cut for anybody that is like a bigger studio. Oops. I guess I shouldn't have emptied these out. This is going to take forever. Well, actually, it's clearing out. Okay. So that 30% cut is, like, actually really bad for small indie games. I really wish it was one of those that, like, if you sell less than 1,000 copies on Steam, that cut is, like, minimal, just to give small creators more of a chance. The other one with Steam is that Gabe Newell is, like, 50-something at this point. He's, like, 50 or 60. He's not young. And so the problem with a privately held corporation is unless they become, like, a employee-owned B Corp somewhere along the way, there is a very real possibility whoever steps in after Gabe Newell retires, passes away, you name it, might not give a shit about Steam, and that's terrifying, actually. Like, Valve wins by doing nothing has remained true for years, but that doesn't... You know, what happens when, you know... Oh, I don't know. I don't actually know what, the, like, full ownership situation is for Valve, but I think it's very much like Gabe Newell and his wife own the vast majority of shares, and then it's like some Valve employees and some other like founders and whatnot. It's fine, but you know, if Gabe Newell, say, dies or retires and gives all of his shares to, let's just say, his son Jimothy. I don't know if he has it. Well, he definitely doesn't have a son named Jimothy, and if he does, I don't know. I will eat a hat. No, I won't. Don't hold me to that. But, you know, how many of these, like, rich business owners have we seen over the years where, the person, the original founder, the person who owned the company, was a brilliant businessman, maybe ruthless, definitely hurt some people on the way up, but managed to build, like, a very successful business on their own labor, and then they pass it over to their, you know, idiot heir who has no idea how to run with it and runs it into the ground, or says, no, I don't want to do this, and sells it off to somebody else who really doesn't care about what happens to the business long term. Let's see. And so I'm not going to say that this is going to happen with Steam, but if there is enough people out there who own Valve stocks that decide, hey, we want to sell these off, and, you know, they sell them off to the highest bidder, that highest bidder is almost assuredly going to be companies like Tencent, or Saudi Arabia, or, you know, Saudi-backed Jared Kushner. Not to say that necessarily all of these are going to be bad stewards. Sometimes these things do actually stick around and, like, thrive under new leadership, but in the past, that has not remained true. And so I have kind of this baseline suspicion whenever it's like, you know, new leadership comes in, ruins everything. Blizzard is probably a good example of this, you know, being picked up by Vivaldi. Vivaldi really did just leave them alone. Or not Vivaldi, Vivendi. Sorry, Vivaldi is the browser that I've been using. Vivendi was the people that bought Blizzard. And Activision kind of merged them together. And then they bought themselves out, which was technically good, except for then they were just purely under Bobby Kotick, who was a monster. Like, bona fide and factually terrible person. Did nothing but, weirdly enough, hired, like, ex-Bush administration people to help run the studio, which is just baffling and sad. Okay, inventory's full. I should probably put the car down. Well, inventory, mostly I'm out of oxygen, which is not great. And so, you know, there is a possibility that Valve will remain pure, but I'm not holding out hope. So I'd say we've got maybe about 10, 20 years before everything gets rough in that regard. But then after that, who knows where Steam's going to be? And, you know, 20 years is still a very long time in terms of gaming. You know, 20 years ago, we were still playing games on the PS2 with physical media. You know, this whole digital trend only kicked off like 12 years ago. And so who knows what gaming is going to look like in X number of years. And as we hit the very inevitable, like, upper limit to what games can even look like. Or the upper limit of, like, graphical fidelity, the chances of us actually getting, you know, small handheld consoles and homegrown consoles again goes up, just because big corporations literally have nowhere to go after a certain point. Is how, like, so many AAA games are getting bigger in terms of, like, content, going big open world. Very few of them look better than, say, God of War 2016. Or was it 2018? Doom 2016, God of War 2018, stuff like that. Let's see. And so, you know, there's a possibility that we actually do move back towards that kind of more ideal state of gaming where things are a little bit more homegrown, maybe. The main problem is also just, like, in the meantime, what does this do to gamers and, like, people who buy games and where they buy games from? One of the biggest issues that the market is facing right now is Fortnite, actually. It's not just Fortnite, it's Roblox, it's live service games that are free, quote unquote, aimed at largely children, providing third spaces for them online to, you know, hang out and meet their friends, interact and stuff like that, which is great for kids, except for the fact that none of these companies are good stewards. The closest you get is Minecraft, which is not really a live service game in the same way that Fortnite is. And so, you know, Roblox is probably the worst among them, actively, like, preying on children and getting them suckered into some really, like, shitty business deals? I don't know. The people who are making games for Roblox are working for, like, sub minimum wage, and that does not feel good. Anyway, and so one of the issues that game developers are dealing with is that the average age of, like, a person who plays an indie game, I think, has gone up by, like, a couple of years over the last decade or so. You know, to the point where you really will have to worry about a limited amount of, what is this thing? It's like a tungsten donger eruption. Strange, there's a bunch of them here. But yeah, if kids aren't buying indie games anymore, largely because they can't afford them, but also, you know, discoverability, and that's also not what their friends are doing, that will also change gaming probably for the worst, which I think is not great. I do think indie games have been doing better, but it is somewhat of a marketing problem. You have games like Peak and Clover Pit that break into that public consciousness. But, you know, back in the day, what's a good example? Journey. Journey is a good example of, like, a really nice artsy game that came out just at the right time and saw, like, a massive boom in popularity that jettisoned itself into public consciousness. That's not as doable anymore, just because there's so many games coming out and not so few players to play them, but, like, it still does feel like it is harder to reach players than it ever has been. And so that's creating this kind of weird situation where, like, only a handful of people chosen almost largely by algorithms are able to actually stay in business from a game design perspective. And it's kind of rough because that also means that if you release a sequel and it doesn't do well, it bombs, then your studio is sunk and there's nothing you can do about it. Grab a couple of these, bring them with me. I'll bring the water too. Do we have any food? No. That's fine, this looks pretty good. I just want to carry things around with me that might not get collected. Space food? Oh, the toxic goo removal canisters. We should hold on to. Everything else I think is getting stored. Anything here in the same vein? No. Because the plant seeds can just sit here and rot for a while. Okay, so I came from there? Yeah, because that's where the dongers were. Cool. So I guess we're going this direction. I don't know where I'm going. There's just this whole upper section that I've never seen before, and I was very curious to see what was up here. The answer is, not too much. I guess I didn't need to build those storage units, but it is kind of fun watching the horde of drones fly out here and just grab things. Okay, is there anything left? Might be some islands below me that I could go and grab, now that I'm looking at it. Okay. And that my drones have emptied these out. We can actually just hoover all this stuff up. Awesome. And so, yeah, I still have a lot of hope. It feels like indie games, even if their sales are always going to be, like, struggling to find relevance in sales and visibility, it does feel like indie games are very much where the games industry should be going. Even if, yes, that is going to cause a lot of, like, real pain and suffering on the AAA scale, because, you know, you really do kind of need corporations to be able to pay people to keep large quantities of folks in the business. Like, the sheer amount of indie developers, not indie developers, well, indie developers and regular developers who literally cannot stay in the industry anymore because there's no way to, like, make a profit or pay rent or healthcare or food. You know, that developers have to be able to do that to be able to keep making games. And so the problem is, like, if the whole market is designed in such a way, set up in such a way that there's no stability, you're only going to have people that are, like, true diehards that are willing to sacrifice everything to make games, which is, you know, there's some level of, like, that being admirable. The problem is that's still extremely bad for people. You know, imagine being told, hey, this career is awesome, but don't expect to ever own a house. Like, a lot of people are going to balk at that. Let alone, like, you're never going to be able to buy a house or have kids or even really have stable healthcare, so you die young. Like, a lot of people are going to balk at that. Some people will still do it, like, you know, the starving artists of old. But there's still going to be a general, I don't want to say exactly distaste towards... Oh, right. This was the supply one. We were putting all of our food and water in here. Did I set this to supply? No, I didn't. I should. Okay, these are set to supply. This one must not have been. Because there's actually a lot of stuff being stored in here that I've completely missed. And this is where stuff like universal basic income very much kind of comes in, ideally. But obviously, good luck convincing a lot of people that that actually is a good idea. I think all my favorite games are indie games. I've had a couple of, like, AA games that I really, really like recently. And, like, 1 or 2 AAAs, but yeah, I have not seen a whole lot of AAA games that I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna go out of my way for that one. There's a couple that seem good, but most of them are kind of like the same thing I've played a billion times already, just bigger, more bombastic or something like that, and I'm just kind of tired of it. Would I love to see a AAA game take a crack at making a Bullet Heaven? Yeah, absolutely. I think that would actually be really cool. Would I love to see a AAA studio try and make something like this? Yeah, I think that could be neat. I just, apart from looking nicer, at this point, I don't really know if there would be anything meaningful about it. And so, oh. What does that do? Oh, is that for going... Oh, I see. That's just for something else. Oh, it's for some of these elevators. What is the point of any of this? Guess there doesn't need to be. Let's check these buildings out, see if there's anything in them. Maybe go get some water. Oh, right. I'd already checked that one out. It was full empty. Supposedly there's an elevator on that one, but I don't see it. Yeah, I don't think I've seen a better indie marketing team than Aggro Crab. People that made Peek and Another Crab's Treasure. Oh yeah, I would say... Oops, nope, not this one. We do want to take a drink though. Aggro Crab has done an incredible job with their marketing. I would say their first game, prior to Another Crab's Treasure, it was called Going Under. I didn't like Going Under that much. I thought it was kind of a mid-action roguelike and not a very good roguelike. But it had charm and, like, the writing for it was nice. But their marketing was so on point that they were able to kind of get around the fact that the game itself was kind of so-so. Enough that they were profitable enough to stay in business and can make another game. That's kind of what I was talking about with... If developers have no sense of security, they can't make better and better games. Like, if if they more or less put out another, or not another Crab's Treasure, if they put out Going Under, then Win Under themselves because they just did not, you know, get enough sales and attention, we would have never gotten another Crab's Treasure, which is like an actually really good Souls-like, and we would not have gotten a Peak. And so, like, to some degree, we need some level of stability so developers who actually, like, care to make good games can continue to make good games. Because then otherwise you just end up with a situation like, I know this is going to be a hot take, but Expedition 33 is one of those kind of like weird nepotism games that I feel off about. It's good that it did well. I wish they hadn't used generative AI for some placeholders and then lied to the Indie Game Awards about it, but hey, whatever. I don't need to relitigate that beyond just like a slight frustration with bad marketing on their end. Marketing, PR, public relations at the very least. But Sandfall Studios is made and funded, their CEO is like the relative of, son of some like really rich French investor types. And his like first job in the industry was working as a producer at Ubisoft. You don't just hop into being a producer at Ubisoft unless you have hella connections with family. And so like, luckily it actually seems like they, you know, did a good job with Expedition 33 and are at least saying and hopefully doing the right things. You know, maybe 5-10 years from now we find out that everybody, it's actually a terrible place to work at. Who knows? But it's one of those where I feel weird when the only people that are succeeding are the ones that have like wealthy backing from their rich families, because that just feels not great. And like, good if somebody who is ultra wealthy does want to get into this business and does want to like fund a whole studio and make a great game. But there's some amount of me that is just kind of like a little uncomfortable with the idea of the marketing and the mythos around Expedition 33 has kind of bothered me a little, mostly from the perspective of like, oh, it's such a small team. You know, they made this with only like 30 people and like 100 plus contractors, but nobody ever talks about the contractors. You know, they did it fully on their own. Yeah, but with funding from an extremely rich, you know, investment group, willing to bankroll them, and a publisher with like a decent war chest to make something like this. You know, not to say that these are strictly bad things. I think, you know, it's good that the game was made, and I'm glad to see that, you know, it's getting a decent amount of flowers as opposed to, I don't know, whatever Ubisoft. What has Ubisoft even made recently? I have no idea, actually. And so like, you know, good that they're doing well, good that they've pulled this off, but it's hard for me to believe or even think of that game as indie. It's not really. Even from like the most generous metrics, it's very much a like semi-independent AA game. And that's good. You know, I think we should actually be highlighting and acknowledging more AA games for being good, because it actually feels like AA studios generally are some of the most like creative and effective developers on the market. Oh, right. Ubisoft made a failure Star Wars game. Was that Outlaws? I think Outlaws did okay. Like it had your classic Ubisoft launch, which was a lot of bugs and some issues, but the people who've actually played Outlaws have said very good things about it. So I think it's just one of those where chalk it up to Ubisoft for ruining a perfectly good product purely with their bad, their terrible back end work. Let's see. That was it. There's a lot more leeway when the game is actually good. Sales of the Baldur's Gate 3 stuff and stuff about Larian. Okay, so yeah, what did Larian do? First I'm hearing of it. So a couple things with Larian. The CEO was recently talking about how everybody at Larian is now using AI for various things, from like communicating base level concept art to like early script writing passes and stuff, which is if you know anything about AI, that's not great. Concept art is, or if you know anything about the game design process, like you do not want to have AI doing concept art for you. You also don't want it to do script writing passes for you. You also don't want it to do placeholders or anything like that. Like it's very much not something that should be involved in game development, because it just taints the whole process. Even if you don't think it's going to, it will. And so he was kind of smartly talking about like how it's, you know, we're using it, but it's not very good, but we're using it all over the place, and you know, people are fine with it. And that just felt off. But yeah, a lot of people hate AI, and we're like, no, Larian, like you should not be using this technology. It's made from theft, and you know, is helping kill the planet, and any number of things. You guys kind of know the arguments at this point, hopefully. And so he was trying to kind of defend the process of like, well, we asked everybody and they were okay with it, and like no one minds, and it's fine. We're not using it much. And it's not really that amazing, so it's not that bad, right? You know, just kind of this, like, really gross, like, we're using it, don't hate us for it argument. And I think he was kind of blindsided by the immediate and massive negative reaction to this, you know, did a little bit of, like, token attempts at, like, getting people to lay off, you know, just explain it away, but digging the hole deeper in the process. And so a lot of people are kind of mad at Larian right now because, yeah, don't really, you know, Baldur's Gate 3 would not have existed with how kind of AI works. It would have just been kind of messy. Maybe they could have made a decent thing in spite of it, but I find that difficult to believe. Oh, it's dark and I can't actually tell the way out of here. Okay, no, this is the right way I want to go. Yeah, by everybody, they probably mean something along the lines of, we started using Gemini Copilot and need our employees to justify the expense. My general assumption is, once again, the guy himself isn't, I don't think he's much of a game developer. He's another business guy. Cool, even. And like, he's actually managed to steer Larian in a pretty good direction for the last X number of years, but he's not great. Like, so one of the other things that came out about this, you know, you had a lot of ex-Larian employees kind of saying like, hey, this actually doesn't surprise me, despite the fact that they've painted themselves as, you know, indie darlings that make good games. They've also been just allowing a alt-right Nazi clique to exist in Larian that actively like shits on their own games in the background and like makes, you know, the women of the studio actually feel uncomfortable. And like, this is multiple people who are corroborating the fact that yes, the CEO is aware that these people exist at the studio and have just been letting them stay there because they're good programmers. And so, oh boy, I don't like this toothpaste filter underwater segment, but is there anything down here? There is. And so, yeah, there was just some level of, like, kind of people ragging on Larian. You know, the dirty laundry was finally starting to come out in such a way that it's like, maybe Larian aren't the heroes that everybody thought they were. Kind of in the same way that, like, Krafton firing all of their, or not firing their developers, Krafton effectively forcing, the Subnautica people to delay Subnautica 2. I actually don't remember where the exit is. Shoot. The problem is toothpaste filter just makes it impossible for me to navigate. It's fine. But it's kind of the same thing as when Krafton had the big kerfuffle a couple months ago about Subnautica 2 and, you know, getting rid of the founders. Which, admittedly, the founders sound kind of shitty too, but originally Subnautica 2 was supposed to come out this year. The developers were supposed to get a big bonus for releasing it, you know, on time. And then Krafton is like, actually, you can't release it on time. No bonus for you, which sucked. And so a lot of people were airing a lot of dirty laundry, admittedly, about both Krafton and... is there anything down there? No. Krafton, and also a little bit about... Was it Strange Worlds? I forget what it was. But yeah, so it's one of those where a lot of these studios are run by, I'm going to say, kind of shitty business types that are happy to put the flag of, well, cozy progressivism on their backs but when push comes to shove, they're perfectly happy to just abandon everything they said they've stood for in favor of presumably more money or something. Or they're just so, far removed from the actual creative process or the game design process that they think they can get away with it. It's a number of things, but it all sucks. And so, like, I don't know if I'm going to care too much about the new Divinity game from Larian. It seems like it might not be great. Or maybe it'll be fine and everybody will love it, and, all the AI proponents are going to be like, see, AI works in game development. Meanwhile, Larian releases the game and then lays off a bunch of people because, I guess we didn't need all of these concept artists and writers. Something like that. Who knows? It varies. Like, you can still make a good game out of shit. It's just you have to work a lot harder. Wasn't COD Project Red in a similar issue recently? Yeah, so, okay. A couple of things on it. One of the people that they hired worked at Larian and was part of that, like, weirdo, not great clique, to my knowledge. But then, yes, they've also talked about using AI in some capacity, and people are mad about that. Like, at this point, any large corporation, especially one that might be publicly traded or has, like, I'm going to say, any company, game design studio especially, that has, like, a rich owner that is, like, very clearly been successful in the past, you do have to kind of worry that they might go all in on stuff like AI, because one of the most, like, the hottest stocks at the moment is anything to do with AI. I had this problem with my mother. This is going to be a completely separate topic, sort of. But a couple of years ago, I was talking kind of negatively towards people that still own stock in ExxonMobil. And my mother got really defensive, and I had not realized this at the time, but my mother owned ExxonMobil stock. ExxonMobil is one of the worst fuel companies in the world in terms of, like, oil spills and environmental destruction and all that jazz. And so for my mother, who is, arguably a progressive person, mostly, who's generally pretty good about, not feeding into, not feeding into too many of the, like, more alt-right, culture war stuff. She is very much a pro-capitalist in such a way that she was going to act very defensively over the fact that she owned a decent amount of ExxonMobil stock. Not enough that it was, like, a huge part of her stock portfolio, but enough that she was, she thought of herself as a stockholder for this corporation. And so for her, this me demeaning people that owned ExxonMobil stock was very much an attack on her. And she got upset about it and was mad at me for it because she had this vested interest in this corporation that, even though it was evil, it was benefiting her. And so it was kind of hard to separate that level of, like, it was kind of hard to separate herself emotionally from the idea of, like, this thing is evil, and by supporting it or owning it, you are, at least to some degree, feeding into this evil system. And obviously, like, she sold the stocks off probably to somebody else that is perfectly willing to own stock in ExxonMobil, but it was still one of those where people very much, like, especially in the US, which, you vote for things that you believe in, more or less. If you believe in something, or if you, say, have financial ties to something, you might actually be less likely to do something about whatever that thing is. So, somebody that owns a big truck might not want a candidate that's saying, hey, we need to get all these big trucks off the road. They're actually causing more problems than they're solving. They're not solving any problems at all. Let's see. A lot of servers in here and circuits. Here's a locker storage. They like to hide those. And so I wouldn't be surprised with a lot of people, both, like, corporate heads and then also politicians. AI is big money investing right now, and so they don't want to do anything about it, or they even want to perpetuate it because that's how their stock value will go up. If you are, X amount invested in anything, it's kind of like, I want this thing to stick around. even if it is technically bad, I would rather people believe that it is good, even if it is still bad. Let's see. Clean this out. Probably grab all the toxic goo out of this and move some things around. Maybe? I don't know. This is like super full. And that in and of itself is an issue. Yeah, I put toxic... Oh, let's put the car outside so I don't have to worry about sorting it at the moment. There we go. I'll get one of these. And so yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the people in charge at Larian aren't at least somewhat invested in AI, either because they actually see like the potential uses for it, or they think they can potentially cut overhead, you know, fire artists using it, or any number of things. Like, there's a ton of different excuses that I've seen thrown around, but very much they're all kind of don't make up for the damage that it causes. And so, yeah, I don't know. Okay, I saw a question about this a while ago, and then I was too busy on a ramble and didn't want to distract myself from it, but it was about the VODs from these streams. They're not going to stick around. Let's see. So they're not going to stick around on Twitch. They'll be sub only. However, I'm uploading every single VOD to youtube.com/channel user WanderVods. It's WanderVods on YouTube is where I'm uploading all of these. Oh, we should put a water purifier in here sooner than later. I guess I might as well grab one. Okay, since we're on the topic, AI and game topic, there's something I want to ask your opinion of. I wanted to make a game, idea of having an open world game with third person Enter the Gungeon Cult of the Lamb style. Use a small amount of AI to make it so you can ask the NPCs questions. I will tell you right now, don't. So having seen like the AI NPCs, they're not nearly as good as like a pre-scripted thing. I'm just gonna hoover these up. We only need like one. So the idea of like the AI chatbot is kind of tempting, you know, oh, it'd be so cool to have like an NPC that reacts to, reacts to what I say or do in these things. One, all of that writing was still stolen. Like, fundamentally, it was pulled from 1,000 writers, or not 1,000, millions of writers who wrote the things originally and were just ingested in, and like shoved into these models. Even if it hasn't like fully been slapped down in court yet, it's still very much one of those where like the original training data is tainted in such a way that no one should trust it. Here, I'm just gonna have this demand everything. As long as we have one of these that is specific to a type. Because we apparently have more toxic water than we know what to do with. I think part of the problem is we actually don't have any space to put the pristine water, so I should go fix that. But yeah, LLMs make sequences of words that seem cromulent from vast swaths of stolen data. You can't have unique personalities. Even if you kind of overfit them to do so, it's still one of those where it's not going to be nearly as good as something that you've written by hand. And also, the vast majority of players literally will never talk to an NPC if they can avoid doing so. And so, like, having a Radiant... Like, Radiant... this is Radiant AI, just extrapolated further out. Yeah, most players would not interact with it. If you've ever played, like, a Fallout 4 or Skyrim, you know all those random quests that you're given that it's like, oh, you know what, I should probably get a second purifier on this. In like Fallout and Skyrim, you know those random quests where they're like, oh no, you know, there's some bandits living in this area. You need to go clear them out. Stuff like that. Adding a Radiant AI to like explain why isn't going to change the fact that nobody gives a shit about those quests. You know, if I have a quest that I know, like intrinsically, the story of it is go here, kill X, get X item, stuff like that. Baseline, it is never going, I'm never going to read that dialogue. Even if it is like lovingly handwritten, unless there's only a handful of these quests and they actually do feed into a larger narrative, I just do not care whatever that NPC has to say. It just does not register. It means nothing to me. That's not a strike against the writing, it's just there's only so much you can do to, you know, put lipstick on that pig. It's boring game design purely for the sake of giving you more things to do to pad the game out. And so, like, World of Warcraft is filled with literally, like, sagas worth of writing for all of these quests that amount to, we need Bortusk livers. Do I actually want to destroy Stinky Treeland? Kind of. I'll leave it there. Either way. We need to make storage for all of this purified water, because I am not using it normally. And so you're better off either limiting how much... oh, it's circuits. You're better off limiting how much people will actually engage with that kind of dialogue completely. And or just, you know, making sure you're handwriting everything to keep things interesting. I don't know, like, I'd rather have less of those quests in general. Like, if you need the assistance of machine to fart out a bunch of extra writing for you, it's probably better to examine why you even need that extra writing and potentially say, hey, maybe I should just get rid of a lot of this writing. And then even on, like, a conceptual level, well, I don't know if I want to say, like, on a conceptual level, but like on an effort level, if you're making tons, like spending tons of time and effort onto something that no one's ever going to bother with, that actively will make players potentially hate your game, it's probably worth examining why you even need that, and if there's some other way you can do it that, one, doesn't require technology that most people hate. Why do I still have these things here in retrospect? Oh, this is my algae generator. I thought that was the water purifier. I'm a fool. It's okay, we can just rebuild it. Doesn't seem like my robots are harvesting these things, but we don't need that much algae anyway. I think one of the other kind of ideas within that specifically is that a lot of developers, especially indie developers who've never made a game before, one, shoot too big. And I know this is something I have to struggle with. Not that I've actually made or released any games myself at this point. It's all just been like back end me working on thing for the fun of it. Right, I was gonna go get a drink. That's why I got distracted. That could drink some of that pristine water. I'm just holding on to it in case I actually need it for something, even though I literally am going to have hundreds by the time I'm done with this game. Let's see. What was I going to say? I really wish I could make like a water tower in this one. Oh, it's not that I need the extra writing. It's that I have a personal issue with games railroading me into not getting to be inquisitive. So I think with that one, then I would just figure out how to be as exhaustive as possible with your writing. Easy example of this would be like Scarlet Hollow, which just has an insane amount of writing behind it. Same thing with Slay the Princess. The problem with that is very much that, like, you can't fuse human writing with a AI generated AI. You can't fuse like human writing with machine learning and have it jive particularly well. The two are, there's no like natural synergy point between the two apart from the human writing being fodder for the AI to you know, train from. But these models themselves aren't specialized in this kind of writing system. And so at best you're going to get, or at best you're going to get something that sounds kind of wooden. At worst you're going to get players that trick their trick NPCs into saying extremely stupid shit as a joke. They might be able to like do the lore and dialogue background story stuff you want, but it's not going to sound good. Yeah, the risk reward isn't worth it. And if it's a minor NPC, putting the effort into writing the character and quests yourself is going to make you more invested and love the character more. And, you know, players will respect that and notice that. Like, would I have loved to spend more time talking to characters in, say, Undertale? Oh, absolutely. But sometimes it's okay to actually let your imagination run wild. Or if you want to go further, just engage in like fan fiction or make your own story based on those characters, delving deeper into them. What the heck am I doing? I don't know. I have a whole bunch of toxic stuff I guess I could rip up. Because yeah, at this point I'm on like pure clean mode. How are we doing on the world, by the way? So planet purification is 49%. We've cleared almost half of the toxic goo, actually. That's really good. That's really good. Okay, let's go grab the car and go hoover up a bunch of those toxic fields kind of nearby. Yeah, remember the social media posts of Darth Vader saying extremely terrible things in Fortnite. Yep. But then the other thing is, once again, no matter what you're doing with so many of these, you know, implementations of AI, or, okay, sorry. The other thing you have to contend with, if you want to try and use it, is like a Radiant AI thing. Yeah. Answer is just to be more thorough. Thanks for that push. I need to not take the easy road. And to say within this, if it turns out that the task you're making is monumental, like if you're trying to go for like a big open world game and you want to have like 60 NPCs with this degree of like extensive writing, it might be worth actually examining why you even need those 60 NPCs. That sometimes it's better to have a very small subset of subset of characters that you interact with on, I'm going to say, an actual not intimate level. Well, I mean, it's intimate, just not sexy intimate. That if you have too much dialogue in too many places, people will kind of start to really tune out on whatever the product is. Like, I can't tell you how many, well, I mean, easy example of this would be like, one of the beauty parts of OG, like, original Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest was, the princess has been kidnapped, you know, go save her, and you don't have like a 30-minute conversation with the king about like the greater details as to why this happened. That people are actually really good at, ooh, this is kind of pretty. People are actually really good at filling the details of these things in on their own. And sometimes it can actually be like a terrible mistake to give players too much. Not necessarily from a like, this will ruin your game level, but that, like people latch onto gaps, I guess, in content. That sometimes what isn't written speaks as many volumes as what was written. And so, like, there's a reason why some of those old school games with not nearly as much dialogue have captured our imagination and excitement for far, far longer than a game that, you know, literally every character is a novel in and of themselves. Let's see. I mean, best example of this is Disco Elysium. Every character says exactly the complete, absolute most that they ever need to say. And yet, as part of that, they are extremely vibrant and interesting characters. Could you talk to them more? Yeah, but sometimes it's almost kind of better to imagine those things separately. And like kind of get into the essence of the characters in your own mind, rather than like having that spelled out for you in the game itself, if that makes sense. Because yeah, imagine once again, you know, in Undertale, if I could have talked to those characters to an extensive and almost excessive degree. I actually think Undertale would have been less popular, you know, if you walk in and Toriel had like a mountain of things to say before you even leave leave her house for the very first time. And like you can even like get into like a deep conversation with Flowey about their motivations, why they're helping you, and maybe even get them to kind of out themselves on being evil early. Like that could be satisfying, I could see. But on the flip side, it's very much like a lot of players would bounce off of that because some players would feel so compelled that they need to you know, keep talking to these characters over and over and over again until they've exhausted every single last bit of dialogue. At which point, you know, 2 hours have passed and they haven't finished anything. Holy shit. There's a massive cave system down here. I think I need to go back, especially because I'm running out of oxygen, and that's not good for me. Okay, let's see if I can squeeze out of this quickly. Yeah, I need to bring the car if I'm doing this. Oh boy. Okay, it was up this. Gosh, I'm glad I have a good sense of direction. Here's the problem, I don't know where the car is. I slapped it down. There. Perfect. Yeah, Shell would have a bad time with infinite dialogue. And she's exactly the kind of person I'm thinking about with this. Is that, so, okay. It's not exactly dirty laundry, but Shell is an overwriter. She, so I want to work on tabletop RPGs, and I've convinced her to run a tabletop RPG too, technically. And so, with her, she has been working on the universe and world for one of the 2 tabletop RPGs pretty much off and on for the last couple of months. She hasn't even, like, drawn the main character yet. I think she knows like, what the, well, main character. Effectively, it's going to be a solo tabletop RPG because she doesn't want to have to, like, contend with other people. Oh, do we... Maybe the algae is just full. Oh, God. I need more dump chests. I think we need a food dump chest, actually. Yeah, let's go figure that out. But so she's been developing this world, like, extensively. And so it'll probably be very interesting to play through. But she's been working on it for so long that, you know, I've run laps around her. Oh, do we actually... I think this might all be pristine water in retrospect. That's fine, frankly. But she's doing all of this, like, preparatory work and lore and background details and whatnot. So at no point in this story will there ever be any gaps in her knowledge, so she can smoothly explain and roleplay and plot out the whole story start to finish without having to, you know, without having to pause or, like, write things out or something like that. For her, Shell loves getting into dialogue. She loves talking to NPCs. We had fights years ago. Like, I think you can actually see this if you go back and watch our first episode on I Am Setsuna. I was actively ignoring NPCs because I didn't want to talk to the 30 or so NPCs in the starting town. And she was mad at me because I wasn't talking to them. And so I was like, okay, fine, we're going to talk to a couple of them. And they said nothing. None of it meant anything. It was all just like basic background detail and nothing else. And Shell had to read all of those because she wanted the full context of what was going on in the game. It took us 20 or 30 minutes to get out of that town to the point where, like, it took forever to actually even get into our first fight. Can I copy these? Hopefully I can. Yes. Pea water. And obviously, like, I think she is a little bit more obsessive, She's a lot more obsessed about these things than another person might be. But a lot of people will latch onto these and feel like, okay, no, I kind of need to talk to these characters. You know, if all of this stuff is in this game, you know, I need to see where the dialogue goes. There might be interesting, you know, secrets and lore and stuff that I don't want to miss. And the problem with a lot of that is just that, you know, especially if it's generated by an AI, one, how do you even know that that AI is going to be correct? You know, it's not infrequent that these things hallucinate details and make shit up. And so, you know, say you have this, like, radiant AI that's entirely, you know, trained on your data set to hopefully respond like the NPC. You have no way of guaranteeing that. You know, the best you can do is just overfit it to the point where it hopefully doesn't deviate. But, you know, what if it does? What if it actually starts just making shit up? What's the dark backstory of the main villain? You ask the NPC. Oh, I don't know that. No, you do. What's the dark backstory of this? And you kind of go back and forth and you jury rig it a little bit. You know, AI is kind of easy to jailbreak just by threatening it or pleading or asking nicely. Like, there's a lot of ways to trick it into saying shit that it shouldn't. And because these models are built off of common models, you know, pulled from public data, let's have this one be fuses. This is just dump area for stuff I don't need. Because AI is built off of these common models that were, you know, built off of stolen data from a million books and social media posts and everything and anything in between, they absolutely will, if you go long enough, they will absolutely just start regurgitating other stuff that they're not supposed to, even if it doesn't make any sense for them to do so. And you can't really rely on that from like a game design perspective to give a consistent answer. You know, no matter how much you try and put those guardrails on, it will break eventually. Unless the whole training data and the model itself was made, you know, pure custom for it, at which point you're not using AI anymore. You're making what No Man's Sky has. It's, well, okay. You're not using modern machine learning. You're doing what No Man's Sky does, which it's the same technology. Like, I will say the technology we hate, or at least I'm hating on in AI, I recognize I've been just talking about this for 2 hours, but hey, you know what? If people are this deep in this series and they don't know that I hate AI, hopefully this was not too much of a surprise. Anyway, No Man's Sky actually, as far as I know, is using all of the same tech that like Stable Diffusion and DALL-E and ChatGPT are. The thing is, all of the training data that they have that they're using is theirs. Like, they made these models from scratch. They filled them out with their own data. It is the true ethical AI. And so if you ever want to see why this Radiant AI stuff looks really bad when it's not trained off of the sum total of human labor, look at No Man's Sky. They did a fantastic job of making it work, but you land on a planet and the first thing you see is one of those like Renaissance era painting cows that looks more like a brick with tiny legs, and it looks at you and goes and then wanders off because that's all it knows how to do. It's not like this thing actually has like a pack that is following around. You know, it might be vaguely programmed to spawn and stick near to a couple of other creatures, but as soon as you like hop in your ship and fly away or hop in water, that Renaissance era cow that just farted at you disappears, winks out of existence, and then the game is like, oh, you've gotten back out of the water again. Looks like we need to add another cow herd in the area. And as soon as you turn around, a different cow is spawned into the same spot. It's a magic trick. It's a really good magic trick, but it is a magic trick to trick you into thinking that that it is actually depth. And so No Man's Sky, to its credit, does an incredible job at this, and as such, you know, is a very compelling experience. Most things cannot pull that off. Where did I put? Yeah, there's the water bottles. If I'm going down into a deep dark cave, we should probably have a number of these things. Is your name John Connor? No, but that is funny. Let's see. Okay. Let's go back down. I did not realize there was going to be this whole, like, underground cave system here. Oh, teleporter building equipment. Yeah, we should do that. That's a good call. I was just going to do the platforms, because that's what we did kind of up over there, but having a teleporter is good if I run out. Plus, who knows if I ever want to come back to this space. So we want to do... I guess we actually might as well mark the recipe. So we want super alloy rod. We want 2 pulsar quartz. Ooh, I need more of those. Let's see, we need an osmium. Oh. Okay. I gotta stop you. Are we full up on osmium rods? No. This is requesting osmium, right? Okay. I guess we're just gonna leave it like that. Maybe I just left it for too long. Okay. Where the heck is the obsidian? Here? Here. I might have to reorganize this at a later date. Where's my zeolite? Oh. Oh, okay. There it is. We do actually have zeolite up here. Perfect. That should be enough. So I got my car. I've got everything good. I'll get a bean. Drink some water and then we'll head over there. Underground world with 80 toxic sludge piles. Glory to the mole people. Yeah. As a kid, I always wanted to live underground. I just thought it would be cool. I'm kind of sad that you can't, but I understand why.